Hey guys, tonight we journey into a world you think you know, but trust me, you don't. Forget fairy tales with knights in cozy castles. Forget woolen cloaks by roaring fireplaces. Tonight's tale is colder, much colder. It's a story about bedtime, but not the kind you're used to. No warm beds, no central heating, and definitely no scented candles. We're stepping into the bone-chilling, flea-ridden nighttime reality of medieval peasant life. And we're doing it from the inside out. Before we start our descent into straw mattresses, drafty huts, and freezing toes, I just want to say if you enjoy these long, immersive journeys into history, consider liking the video and subscribing. It truly helps me keep the hearth fire burning, and it means a lot. And hey, let me know in the comments where are you tuning in from, and what time is it where you are? It's always fascinating to see who's curling up with history from different corners of the world. Now dim the light. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft hum in the background. Let your body relax. Let the noise of the modern world melt away and slip into the shadows of history. Tonight's journey: how medieval people slept in huts without blankets. Yes, you heard that right. Without blankets. Because if you think falling asleep in a slightly chilly bedroom is hard, imagine doing it in a home made of sticks and mud, where your bed is a flattened pile of straw crawling with company, and the only insulation is hope, body heat, and maybe a damp goat. This isn't the medieval experience of kings or nobles. This is the nightly struggle of the common folk, the peasants, the forgotten, the ones who built the world and froze in it. We'll start by waking up in a medieval hut, only to discover we didn't really sleep much at all. Then we'll talk about what passed for bedding, how people stayed warm without real blankets, and why sleeping next to your grandmother, your siblings, and a chicken wasn't just normal, it was necessary. You'll feel the cold. You'll hear the wind howling through the walls. You'll itch from the straw, wrinkle your nose at the smell of damp earth, and truly wish for one soft fleece blanket from Costco. And by the end, as your eyes grow heavy and the fire fades to embers, you'll be grateful that you're not actually there. Grateful that you get to sleep under a roof that doesn't leak, in clothes that don't crawl, with air that doesn't bite. Because, as uncomfortable as it might be to listen to the past, it was far more uncomfortable to live it. So tonight, let's peel back the centuries, step over the threshold of a peasant's hut, and lie down beside the fire. Let the world quiet. Let the history speak. And remember, you're about to fall asleep to the sound of a medieval world where blankets were a luxury and freezing was just another part of the bedtime routine. You wake up, but not gently. There's no soft alarm, no sunbeam filtered through blackout curtains. Instead, you're jerked from a restless, half-frozen slumber by the sound of something very much alive rustling near your head. A chicken, probably. Or a rat. Maybe both. One of them definitely pecked you in the night. Your eyes open to darkness. Not the cozy kind. Not the kind your mind can rest in. This is deep, damp, oppressive dark. The sort that presses in from the corners and hangs above you like a wet wool curtain. There's no lamp, no light switch. Just a dying ember in the center of the hut, faintly glowing beneath a pile of ash. The air smells like wet straw, stale sweat, and last night's onion porridge. There's smoke too, still hanging low in the air from the hearth fire that never quite made it through the night. Your throat burns slightly with every breath. You cough once, and your breath rises in front of your face like a ghost. It is bitterly cold. Your body is wrapped in not blankets, not sheets. You've got a scratchy wool tunic still damp from yesterday, and a threadbare cloak that smells unmistakably of goat. You may have slept in your shoes. Hard to tell. Your feet are numb. You try to move, but there's no room. Someone is sleeping next to you, likely your cousin or your brother. You're not sure whose leg is across your back, or who's snoring with a wheeze that suggests their lungs are full of something medieval and incurable. There's a small child curled against your side, radiating just enough warmth to remind you that you're still alive. Another body, someone older, mumbles in their sleep and shifts on the other side. Above your head, the thatched roof groans as the wind picks up outside. A draft sneaks through the wall because the wall isn't really a wall. It's wattle and daub. Sticks plastered with mud, straw, and, yes, a healthy dose of manure. In summer, it cracks and crumbles. In winter, it weeps. You're not sleeping in a bed. You're sleeping on a pallet sack. If you're lucky, stuffed with straw. If not, just the straw itself, scattered over the dirt floor, like someone gave up halfway through making a nest. The straw is damp. It always island, and it's alive. Fleas jump, lice scuttle. You feel something bite your ankle, but you don't react. You're used to it now. There's no pillow. You might be using a bundle of old clothes or a wrapped-up satchel of barley. You have a cloth over your head, not for comfort, but to keep the heat from escaping through your scalp. A cap, maybe, or just an old rag tied tight. It's less sleepwear and more survival gear, and this is just how it island every night. The hut itself is small, barely enough room for your entire family to lie down shoulder to shoulder. 8 of you, sometimes 9, squeezed into a single room. Walls stained with soot, a roof sagging inward. The fire pit sits in the center like a dying heart, cold and forgotten. There's no chimney, only a hole in the ceiling, and even that's too small to let the smoke out properly. You don't get much sleep. Not restful sleep, anyway. The cold keeps waking you. So does the coughing, the wind, the occasional sound of rats rustling in the rushes. Sleep is a necessity, not a pleasure. You pass out from exhaustion, and that counts as rest. There's no privacy, no bedroom, no door to close. You're a body among bodies. You're born into this shared space, and you'll likely die in it too. If you want solitude, you go outside. And in the middle of a medieval winter, that's not a comforting option. The wind cuts like a knife. Your breath freezes in your beard. You'd rather be here, with the snoring and the fleas and the sour smell of humanity. Sometimes, the livestock sleeps inside, too. On especially cold nights, the pig or the chickens might be brought into the hut, huddled in the corner for their warmth, and you'll hope they won't relieve themselves too close to the food sack. You hear them now, shuffling, clucking, one of them pecking at the straw. You reach for the embers in the hearth, trying to coax them back to life. You blow gently. They glow brighter for a second, then fade. The fire died during the night. That's dangerous. It means the cold won. It means you'll have to restart it from scratch, which is hard, time-consuming, and risky. If you can't relight it, you may face the entire day and night again without warmth. And your fingers are stiff. You flex them, crack them. Your joints ache. You're not old, not really, maybe 25. But your back feels older. You slept in one position all night because moving meant rolling into someone's armpit or falling into the fire pit. You dreamed of heat, of food, of soft beds, but dreams are cruel in this world. They remind you of things you can't afford. The sounds of waking life begin to stir. A cough, a sniff. The sharp clatter of a wooden ladle as someone gropes blindly for the water bucket. The bucket froze again, of course. You'll need to break the ice layer on top. Again, your mother murmurs something in the corner, half prayer, half grumble. Someone opens the door, and cold air rushes in like a thief. You hiss, instinctively pulling your cloak tighter. A dog barks outside, then another. The sun is just beginning to rise. but there's no warm glow, just a pale grey smear of light crawling across the wall. This is morning in a medieval hut. This is how it begins, not with a stretch, or a smile, or a peaceful sigh, but with stiff limbs, frozen toes, and the question you ask yourself every single day: did I sleep enough to survive? And more importantly, will I sleep tonight at all? The first task of the day isn't breakfast. It's not hygiene either. It's survival triage. The fire must be rebuilt, the water unfrozen, the cold confronted. You rise slowly, every joint protesting. Your feet hit the packed earth floor, solid, uneven, and already damp. Your toes tingle, then burn as circulation returns. You can feel the frost from the ground pressing upward through the soles of your boots, if you're lucky enough to own boots. If not, your toes are wrapped in cloth, ragged and damp, tied in place with strips of leather. They itch, they sting, and they never really dry. Your hands are stiff from sleep, if you can call it that. You rub them together, trying to stir warmth. Then you shuffle over to the hearth and uncover the coals. The fire went out during the night again. Someone should have banked it better. That someone might have been you. But memory fades when your stomach growls louder than your thoughts. You begin the ritual. Flint, steel, kindling. There are no matches, no easy ignition. Starting a fire from scratch is an ordeal, especially with fingers that feel like frozen wood. You strike again and again. A spark, a flicker. The kindling smokes. You blow on it with hope and desperation. The tiny flame catches. It will live barely. No one speaks much in the morning. There's only coughing, shivering, and the occasional grunt as someone trips over the corner of a straw mattress. Someone else stumbles outside, half asleep, to empty the night pot. It sloshes. The air outside is colder than inside. But at least it doesn't smell like smoke, damp wool, and 10 people's breath. Now, breakfast. You don't go to the kitchen. You are the kitchen. The entire hut is one room. The cooking fire is also the heating source, the light source, and the social center of the home. You take a blackened pot sitting by the hearth since last night and scrape out whatever hardened remains still cling to it. Yesterday's pottage? Maybe. Or the day before's. It's hard to tell. Medieval leftovers don't come with labels. Into the pot goes a handful of barley or oats if you have any. A piece of onion, if it's not too shriveled. A few dried beans. You cover it with water, set it over the fire, and wait. No spices, no salt. Those are luxuries. What you have is texture, grit, warmth. Sometimes that's enough. You stir with a wooden spoon darkened from years of use. A splinter jabs your finger. You ignore it. Splinters are part of the experience. You test the thickness of the pottage. It should be thicker than soup, thinner than hope. You sniff it. Earthy, sour, comforting in its own way. Meanwhile, your younger sibling is gnawing on a chunk of stale bread. It's dense, dark, and full of coarse flour rye, if you're lucky. More likely a mix of whatever grains were cheapest last season. The bread is hard enough to chip a tooth. It's often dipped into the hot pottage to soften it. You do the same. No butter, no jam, no coffee, just calories. If you're incredibly lucky, there might be a piece of cheese, old, firm, and pungent. Peasant cheese is not a gentle friend. It smells like someone's feet, and it tastes like someone's regrets. But it has fat, and fat means fuel for the long day ahead. You eat sitting by the hearth. Everyone does. There's no table, no chairs, just the floor, or a log, or your own haunches. You shovel the food in slowly, warming your hands over the bowl more than your stomach. Next, hygiene, or something like it. There's no bathroom, no sink, no soap. There is a wooden bucket of water provided it hasn't frozen overnight. You check. It has. Of course it has. You break the ice on top with a ladle and scoop up the frigid water with shaking hands. You splash your face. It stings. It shocks you awake. You shiver so hard you almost drop the bowl. There's no towel, just your sleeve. You wipe the water away and look around for something sharp. It's shaving day if you're one of the few who still bothers, but the blade is dull, and the mirror is just polished metal. You decide to skip it. Again, your beard can wait. To brush your teeth, you chew on a twig. Literally, it's a birch or hazel branch, frayed at the end like a rustic toothbrush. You scrape at your teeth, hoping to remove the film of sleep, smoke, and yesterday's onion stew. There's no toothpaste. Some people rub salt or ashes on their teeth. You've tried it. It doesn't help much. The smell of people starts to rise with the fire. You smell yourself. Everyone does. There's no shame in it. It's just how life island. If you stink, it means you're alive. But still, you take a cloth, damp it, and wipe under your arms. Your shirt is stained. There's no changing into a fresh one. This is your shirt. Bathing? That's not a morning activity. That's not even a weekly activity. Most peasants bathe once a season, twice. If someone dies or gets married, and even then, you're not soaking in a tub with lavender. You're standing in a wooden barrel of cold water, scrubbing with sand and a prayer. Lice? Of course. Fleas? Constant companions. Itching is as natural as breathing. You scratch your scalp and make a mental note to boil your hood next week. You won't. But it's nice to imagine. Your mother tends to the children, wiping noses with the corner of her sleeve. She dabs a cloth in warm water and wipes their faces. No one cries. Crying is a waste of moisture. She pours hot water from the kettle into a clay cup, mixes it with herbs she gathered months ago, nettles perhaps, or yarrow, and hands it to your father. It's bitter, but it helps his cough. Or at least it makes him believe it does. As the fire grows stronger, someone opens the hut's door to let the smoke out. It billows for a moment, then escapes upward like a fleeing spirit. Light pours in. It's pale. It's cold. It reveals everything. The dirt floor, the tattered tunics, the sleeping straw, the drying herbs hung from the beams, the piles of wood in the corner. The family huddled together like animals still shaking off the night. You look down at your hands. Rough, blistered. Your nails are dark. Your skin is cracked. This is not a world of manicures and moisturizers. This is a world of grime and grit and wiping your face with the same hand that fed the pigs. But this is how you live. This is how you begin each day. No glamour, no convenience, just ritual. Smoke, heat, hunger, cold water on a dirty face, and maybe, if you're lucky, just enough warmth in your belly to last until the sun goes down again and you return to your straw mattress, praying the fire doesn't die. You're dressed, or at least as dressed as a medieval peasant is ever going to be. It's not about style, it's not even about warmth, not really, it's about function. And even that is generous. Your clothing, if it can be called that, is simple, homespun, and chronically disappointing. You have one tunic, maybe two if your family is doing unusually well. It's made of wool, rough, heavy, and itchy even on a good day. It was probably passed down from an older sibling, or patched together from several other tunics that died long before you were born. Under it, there's a linen shirt if you're lucky. If not, it's just skin and wool making unpleasant contact. Linen is rare, expensive, and prone to disintegrating after a few washes, so most people wear it until it's little more than a glorified spiderweb. You might have some kind of underpants, but don't expect elastic or comfort. It's more like a fabric diaper, tied at the hips with a cord that hasn't been untied since Michaelmas. Over your tunic, you wear a belt, Not a stylish one, but a practical strip of leather or rope that keeps your garments from flapping in the wind or catching in the fire. Hanging from it might be your eating knife, your work pouch, or a small bag of crumbs that used to be food. Your cloak, if you own one, is your most precious item. It's probably homemade, maybe felted from wool, possibly lined with rabbit fur, if someone in your family was particularly ambitious or knew how to trap. It smells like smoke, sweat, wet grass, and despair. But it keeps out the worst of the wind. You don't clean it, you air it. And only when the stench becomes a family issue. Your shoes? Let's talk about your shoes. They're made of leather, untreated, stiff when it's cold, floppy when it's wet, and useless when they rot, which they will. The soles are thin, there's no cushion, no socks. Just your feet against the raw interior of a medieval moccasin, feeling every rock, root, and sharp insult the road has to offer. And if you don't have shoes, many peasants don't you wrap your feet in cloth and hope the mud doesn't freeze your toes off before Lent. Buttons don't exist yet. Zippers are science fiction. Everything is tied, wrapped, or pinned with something sharp that occasionally stabs you when you move too fast. If something breaks, you sew it. If it tears, you patch it. If it disintegrates, you wear it anyway and hope no one stares too long. Now imagine putting on wet wool, not just damp-soaked, the kind of wet that's part rainwater, part body heat, and part mystery. It clings, it smells, it chafes, and because drying clothes indoors means hanging them near the fire, which fills the room with even more smoke, sometimes it's just easier to wear the wetness like a badge of honor. Your clothing doesn't express your identity. It expresses your poverty. Everyone around you is dressed roughly the same, in earth tones, because that's what wool looks like before dye, and no one's wasting precious herbs to make you look fashionable. Now let's look at the place you call home. You step outside the hut for a moment, and from the outside, it's underwhelming. It's made from wattle and daub, wooden slats woven together like a basket, then smeared with mud, straw, and cow dung. You don't build it for beauty. You build it because it's what you've got. Stone is for lords and churches. Brick is fantasy. You have sticks and mud, and just enough hope to slap them together. The roof is thatched. That means it's made from bundles of reeds or straw, tied tightly and layered to keep the rain out. The problem is, it doesn't always work. In spring, the roof leaks. In winter, it freezes. In autumn, it sheds straw like a nervous horse. And in summer, it becomes home to every insect with legs and bad intentions. Sometimes birds nest in the thatch, sometimes rats. You hear them moving above you at night, scrabbling through the ceiling like tiny burglars. Occasionally something drops onto your blanket. You learn not to ask what it island. Inside, your hut has one room. That's it. One room for cooking, eating, sleeping, coughing, arguing, birthing, dying, and everything in between. There might be a loft for storage or for the children to sleep. There might be a small partition of woven branches to divide your parents' space from yours. But it's all symbolic. Privacy doesn't exist. Secrets don't last long. And neither do walls without holes. There are no windows. Not really. Maybe a small slit in the wall, covered with animal skin or oiled parchment if you're fancy. It lets in light, and cold, and flies. Glass? Unthinkable. Even the manor house down the road might only have a few panes, guarded like treasure. The floor is dirt. Not polished, not swept. Just packed down earth, hardened by generations of footsteps. In wet months, it turns to mud. In dry months, it cracks. Sometimes people throw rushes down dried grasses or herbs to make it more comfortable. These rushes stay for weeks or months, collecting everything. Spills, ash, bones. rot. You just throw new ones on top and pretend it's clean. Furniture? Minimal. A table, maybe. A stool if someone's clever. A chest to store what little you have: grain, tools, or your grandmother's one good dress. The fire pit sits in the center of the room. There's no chimney. The smoke goes up or out or directly into your lungs. Black soot collects in the rafters. Sometimes it falls in flakes like medieval dandruff. If you're lucky, you share your hut with only family. If you're not, you also share it with animal. In the corner, there's a penned-off area barely large enough to fit a small pig or a few chickens. Why? Because warmth. Because livestock equals wealth. And because letting them sleep outside means losing them to wolves or hungry neighbors. There's no running water. You fetch it daily from a well or stream, hauling it in buckets that splash your feet and freeze your hands. There's no toilet, no sewage, just a pit outside or a bush and a chamber pot in the corner for nights too cold to venture out. This is shelter. This is home. Not comfortable, not clean, but necessary. It protects you from the worst of the wind, keeps the wolves from eating your baby, and gives you a place to lie down without being rained on. Most of the time, when it storms, the whole place shudders, the walls leak, the roof sags, the fire hisses under drops of water that fall through the thatch. You press your back against the cold wall and pull your cloak tighter around you, trying not to think about the wind pushing through the cracks. But it's yours, or at least your lord hasn't claimed it yet. And in a world like this, that's saying something. So, you've eaten your soggy barley. You've splashed icy water on your face. You've pulled on clothes that feel like burlap soaked in betrayal. And now it's time to do what you do every single day. Work. Not for advancement, not for glory, but for the simple hope of surviving long enough to do it again tomorrow. Outside, the frost still clings to the ground. The sun is up, but it gives no warmth, just a pale, distant reminder that you're alive and time is passing. You stretch your arms, your back cracks like a bundle of twigs, and you pick up the same tools you used yesterday and every day before that, since you were old enough to walk upright and carry things. You're a peasant. That means labor isn't just part of your life. It is your life. It's not something you do between things. It's what fills the space where joy, comfort, or choice might otherwise live. And today, like most days, you begin in the field. You don't own this land, of course. It belongs to your lord. Everything does. The trees, the stream, the very mud caking your shoes. You work it because you're allowed to, and because if you don't, someone else will, and your family will be out of both food and favor. You carry a wooden spade with an iron tip, if you're lucky enough to own one. Most tools are shared, borrowed, passed down, repaired, re-repaired. You've used the same hoe for 10 years, and the handle is worn so smooth, it feels more like bone than wood. The soil is hard, frozen in places, wet in others. You stomp it, slice it, turn it. You plant barley or rye, or you clear weeds from last season's cabbage patch. You bend low and stay low. The work doesn't allow for standing tall. Not unless you want to throw your back out before the rooster has even stopped yelling. Your hands are already blistered from the first hour. The cold makes it worse. The cracks from yesterday haven't healed, and new ones are blooming. You wipe them on your tunic, blood and dirt. Just another layer. If it's spring, you're planting and praying. If it's summer, you're weeding and sweating. If it's autumn, you're harvesting, back aching, knowing that whatever the yield, most of it goes to the Lord. If it's winter, well, you're cold, hungry, and patching fences or chopping wood just to stay busy and warm. And that's just the fields. If you're not tilling, you might be thatching, or hauling, or digging ditches, building fences, chopping peat from the bog, fetching stones from a quarry that's more rubble than rock. Maybe you're gathering firewood in the forest, carefully avoiding the parts that belong to the Lord. Because if you're caught stealing timber, the punishment isn't a slap on the wrist. It might be a missing hand. Are you a woman? Then you're doing all of this, plus more. You're up before the men, tending the fire, feeding the animals, grinding grain with a stone mortar that gives your arms the texture of old rope. You're spinning wool while walking, nursing a baby while stirring a pot. You carry baskets, haul water, chase chickens, scold toddlers, and bake bread in a makeshift oven made from mud and fire and low expectations. And even children aren't spared. There's no age minimum for survival. By the time you're 6, you're expected to help picking stones, scaring crows, pulling weeds. By 12, you're working like an adult, or apprenticed, or married off if your family needs fewer mouths. Breaks, maybe, if you're lucky. And even then, it's not rest. It's just a different kind of exhaustion. You sit on a rock, chew on stale bread, watch your breath fog in the air. Maybe you take a sip of small beer, weak, warm, and barely alcoholic, but enough to keep the hunger pangs dull and the parasites at bay. Then it's back to it. There's no protection, no gloves, no helmets, no boots with steel toes, just raw exposure. If it's raining, you work wet. If it's freezing, you work frozen. If it's scorching, you sweat until your vision swims and your lips split from the heat. If you're injured, well, best hope it's not bad. There's no sick leave, no workers' compensation, just a quiet corner to die in while your siblings take your place. And the tools are crude, shovels splinter, axes dull, ropes fray, ladders creak in a way that makes you seriously question the value of gravity. You carry hay bales on your back, slop buckets in your hands, stones strapped to your shoulders. There's a rhythm to the work, but no relief. Just repetition. Relentless, aching repetition. The worst jobs, sewage. Always sewage. Emptying the latrine pit, carrying waste to the dung heap, spreading it in the fields as fertilizer, and trying not to think about the smell that will linger on your skin until Judgment Day. Or maybe you're in town today, hauling barrels, unloading carts, delivering goods, sweeping a street so muddy it laughs at the idea of clean. If you're a tradesman, you've got your own shop, or more likely a shared corner in the market where you carve wood, mend boots, or sharpen blades for coins so small they feel imaginary. But coins don't come easy. Sometimes you're paid in bread, or salt, or a promise that doesn't get broken until you're too hungry to care. If you're working on a manor, things can be worse. Overseers watch you with narrowed eyes and thick sticks. You're told how much to produce, how fast, how clean. If you fall behind, you're beaten. If you complain, you're punished. If you disobey, you're replaced. At best, your labor earns you the right to keep living in your hut, to not be evicted, to not be fined, to not be whipped in the village square. You work until your hands shake, until your knees ache, until your shadow stretches long behind you, and the sun finally dips low enough to say just barely that the day is over. You return home limping, dirty, hungry. You peel off your cloak, and it's stiff with dried sweat. You sit by the fire and stretch your back until it pops like a tree branch. You might not speak, or laugh, or even sigh. You just exist, just long enough to eat, sleep, and do it all again tomorrow. Because the truth is, in the medieval world, labor isn't something you do to build a future. It's something you do to delay death. You sit by the fire. Your hands are cracked. Your shoulders ache. The day's labor has drained your body, but your mind isn't entirely yours. Not here. Not in the Middle Ages. Because even after the work is done, you are never alone. Not in your home, not in your thoughts, not even in your sleep. God is watching. So are the saints, the angels, the spirits, the devils, the dead, the demons lurking in the woods and under your floorboards. The Virgin Mary sees your sin, the village priest sees your face, and your neighbors, they see everything else. Belief isn't just a part of your life, it is your life. It's stitched into your tunic, whispered into your food, wrapped into your prayers, and tucked under your straw pillow. From cradle to grave, from sunrise to moonlight, your existence is filtered through the divine and the dangerous. You don't just believe in God, you fear Him. You were baptized before you could walk. That was your first shield, your spiritual armor against hell, demons, and the ever-present fear of dying unclean. Original sin, they say. You're born guilty, and every day is an exhausting attempt to make it right. You cross yourself before meals, before bed, before entering the church, the marketplace, even the outhouse, just in case. Because even relieving yourself without the proper reverence could lead to eternal discomfort, both here and beyond. Sundays are for church, and so are holy days, and saints' days, and feast days, and fasting days. And the day someone in the village sneezes too hard, and you think the plague might be back, you go not because you understand the Latin. You don't. Not a word. You go because not going would be noticed. And being noticed is dangerous. The priest speaks in a language you can't follow, but his eyes are sharp. He knows who hasn't confessed in weeks, who drinks too much, who stared too long at their neighbor's daughter, who might be consorting with things better left unnamed. Confession is not optional. It's spiritual hygiene. You enter the box with sins and leave with guilt. The more honest you are, the more likely you'll be handed penance that involves crawling, praying, or donating your best chicken. And what if you can't confess? What if you die suddenly with sin on your soul? Then you don't go to heaven. You might not even make it to purgatory. You go down. Hell isn't some abstract concept. It's as real to you as the mud in your boots. You've seen it painted on church walls red, twisted, screaming, flames, serpents, pitchforks, devils with claws and pointed teeth. Not just eternal torment, creative torment, the kind that makes your skin crawl just hearing it described. So you say your prayers, you light a candle, you touch the relic in the church, the alleged bone of a saint, encased in glass and mystery. You don't know if it's real, but you're not about to doubt it. And then there's the other layer, because religion is the official belief, but superstition is what gets you through the night. You spit over your shoulder to ward off evil. You toss salt on the threshold to keep away witches. You hang herbs from your rafters, rosemary for remembrance, sage for wisdom, garlic for, well, for everything from disease to demon. You tie red thread around a baby's wrist to keep the fairies from stealing it in the night and replacing it with a changeling, a hollow-eyed imitation that looks the same but isn't. You avoid the crossroads at dusk. That's where spirits linger, ghosts, or worse. You walk quickly past old trees with strange bark. Those are sacred, maybe cursed, definitely not worth testing. You never whistle after dark, never speak the names of the dead unless you want them to answer. You believe in omens, black cats, birds flying the wrong way, a dog howling in the night. Your dreams mean something. Your neighbor's dreams mean even more, especially if they include you drowning or being chased by wolves. You believe that illness isn't always natural. It can be a punishment, a curse, or worse, an evil eye, cast by someone who envied your goat or your wheat or your healthy child. A look, a word, a breath in the wrong direction, and suddenly your milk won't churn and your bread won't rise. You carry charms for protection, a carved bit of bone, a coin rubbed by a traveling monk, a saint's medal stolen from the shrine and hidden in your pocket. You don't understand how they were, but that's the point. You don't need to understand. You just need to believe. And when something terrible happens, a storm that flattens your thatch roof, a child who stops breathing in the night, a cow that won't stand, you don't ask what caused it. You ask who. The blame shifts fast. The old woman with one eye, the quiet man with no friends, the healer with too much knowledge of plants, the widow who doesn't cry at funerals. Witchcraft, you whisper. Maybe a deal with the devil. Maybe she muttered something strange. Maybe she owns a black cat. Accusation is a social ritual. It keeps fear contained, wrapped up in one unlucky person's life. And if they float during the trial by water, well, that's proof, isn't it? Your entire village exists in a delicate dance between the sacred and the suspicious. Too much piety, and you're a saint. Too little, and you're a heretic. Too lucky, and people start to wonder how. Too sick, and people start to wonder why. And the church? The church walks a careful line. It condemns superstition, but it also sells holy water. It warns against relics, but guards its own. It preaches faith, but relies on fear. At night, you whisper a prayer, not just to God, but to Mary, to Street Cuthbert, to Street Bridget, to any holy name you can remember, just in case one of them is in a generous mood. You pray for help. You pray for mercy. You pray that the scratching in the roof isn't rats, or something worse. Then you close your eyes beneath a roof full of smoke and spiders and mutter the most important words you know. God, keep me safe until morning, and may I wake still human. The sun is low. Your stomach has been grumbling since midday. You've chewed on sour bread crusts, drank warm flat ale, stolen a berry or two if it's the season, but now it's time for the one proper meal of the day. You head home, or what passes for home. You step inside the dim hut, already full of smoke and breath and noise. A pot hangs over the hearth, bubbling gently. If you're lucky, it smells vaguely of onion. If you're not, it smells like warm sadness and old cabbage. This is dinner, and dinner is a very optimistic term. Inside the pot is pottage, a thick stew of whatever was available, edible, and not too spoiled. Today it might be barley, dried peas, wild greens, maybe a turnip. If someone caught a rabbit or a bird, there's meat, but that's rare. More likely, the flavor comes from bones boiled twice, and a pinch of salt someone hoarded like treasure. You don't expect variety. Pottage today is pottage tomorrow, is pottage next week. The only difference is the color and the number of flies hovering around it. You grab a wooden bowl dark with age and scratches and a spoon that's seen more mouths than years. Everyone eats from the same pot. There are no courses, no seconds unless someone died and didn't show up to eat. You sit on the ground, near the fire. There's no table, unless someone dragged a plank in from the woods. You sit next to family, neighbors, dogs, and the occasional stray chicken. You eat in silence or with small mutterings. It's not a celebration, it's refueling. Food isn't for fun, it's for not dying. If there's bread, it's stale. You soak it in the pottage. If there's cheese, it's hard and smells like regret. If there's meat, you chew slowly and suspiciously, because it might still be attached to a piece of fur or bone. Water? Only if it's been boiled. Water is dangerous, full of things too small to see but big enough to kill. You don't trust it unless it's been heated into tea, broth, or beer. And beer, well, that's the standard drink. But don't imagine cold, refreshing pints. This is small beer, barely fermented, weak, warm, and cloudy. It tastes like bread soup with a hint of bitterness. You drink it from a cup that may or may not have been rinsed since last week. It's not for pleasure. It's because the river near your house is where people wash, relieve themselves, and sometimes die. Wine? Forget it. That's for the nobility, the church, and the traveling merchants who laugh behind their hands at the idea of living in a thatched mud box. But after dinner, if your stomach isn't cramping from spoiled legumes or yesterday's mushrooms, you might get something close to fun. It's entertainment, medieval style, which means chaos, alcohol, or accidental injury. Maybe you head to the tavern, if your village has one. Not a bustling inn with clean mugs and cheerful patrons. More likely, it's a single dark room with a plank counter, a leaky roof, and a barmaid who's also the owner, cook, and unofficial bouncer. You sit on a bench that tips to the side. You drink ale that's warm, sour, and likely full of floating bits you don't want to identify. You sip slowly not because you're savoring it, but because the last time someone drank too fast, they threw up on the hearth and had to be carried home in a cart full of turnips. The tavern is loud, not happy loud, just loud. People argue, people sing, people insult each other with poetic flair and varying levels of slurring. There's a man in the corner playing a fiddle or something that might once have been a fiddle before mice used it for nesting. Children run in and out, stealing sips from half-drunk mugs and laughing until someone cuffs them on the back of the head. Dogs bark, someone curses, someone laughs too hard and spills their drink into someone else's lap. And you watch, you drink, you try not to get pulled into a fight over whose pig is fatter. Sometimes there's music, not beautiful harp-plucked ballads. Think drums made from stretched pig hide, pipes carved from bones, rhythms that sound more like a thunderstorm in a wheelbarrow than a melody. Dancing? Sure, but it's not elegant. It's stomping, spinning, clapping, and yelling until someone twists their ankle, and everyone pretends it was graceful. And on festival days, rare and glorious, you get game, contests of strength, tug of war using rope that breaks halfway through and sends 5 men into a ditch, archery, if someone has a bow, dice games, if someone carved the dice, gambling, even though the church frowns on it, especially when the priest joins in. You might see a juggler, a traveling fool, or a man with a bear on a chain who claims it can dance, but mostly just stands there looking tired. And in the markets, if your village is big enough, you'll find storytellers. Ragged men with voices like gravel, spinning tales of saints, devils, knights, dragons, and women who turn into swans. You stand in the cold, wrapped in your cloak, mouth slightly open, forgetting your own misery for a minute, as someone tells you a story you've already heard 15 times, but love anyway. Sometimes there's theatre, not a stage with curtains, but a wagon with boards nailed to it, and actors in masks made of cloth and soot. They perform morality plays. You know the characters. Vice, virtue, gluttony, death, always death. He comes at the end, swinging a stick and shouting in Latin. You don't understand it, but you clap anyway. If you stay home, you might play a game with your family knucklebones, or a dice game using stones, or a storytelling circle where each person adds 1 line. The rules are vague. The cheating is bold. The laughter is rare, but real. And then there's singing, not because you have talent, but because it's cold, you're full, and your body still remembers joy, even if your life forgot it. You hum while someone drums their fingers on a bowl. You sing about saints, about storms, about animals doing silly things. You sing until your voice cracks and your breath fogs and your heart feels just a little warmer. And then the fire dies down. The ale runs out. The wind picks up. Someone snores. Someone stumbles into the corner and pees. You curl up on the floor, or you walk home through the mud and moonlight, half hoping not to fall into a ditch. You've eaten, you've sung, you've survived another day, and that, in this world, is entertainment. You cough just once, a dry, rasping sound that echoes in the silence of the hut. But in the medieval world, even a single cough is enough to summon fear, the kind of fear that moves behind the eyes, tightens the throat, and whispers. What if it's something more? Because illness is not just part of life here. It is life's shadow, constant, creeping, and never, ever polite. You live in a world where pain is normal, where fever means risk, where a cut from a rusted blade might become an infection that takes your arm or your life. There is no Tylenol, no antibiotics, no hospitals with beeping machines and crisp white bedsheets. There is only blood, pus, ointments made from old herbs, and hope. Most people you know are sick in some way. Your mother's joints are always swollen. Your brother coughs through the night. Your neighbor has a weeping sore that won't heal, and everyone's pretending not to see it. You've had worms, lice, rashes, toothaches so bad you prayed for unconsciousness. And that's on a good week. Let's talk about teeth. You don't brush. You scrape. Maybe chew a twig. You use ashes, salt, or vinegar. Cavities aren't drilled, they're endured. Gums bleed. Teeth fall out. Breath smells like regret and last month's onions. If the pain becomes unbearable, someone will offer to pull it, usually with pliers, a steady knee, and a lot of screaming. Then there's the plague. Yes, the plague. You've heard the stories. You've seen the signs. The sudden swellings under the armpits. The black blotches on the skin. The wild, feverish eyes. When it comes, it doesn't knock. It storms through your village like a divine punishment. You remember the last time it passed through. People dropped in the street. Entire families vanished. Graves were dug hastily, if at all. Some bodies were burned. Some just left. The priest couldn't keep up with the burials, so he started skipping the prayers. You watched the cart roll by, filled with corpses. You recognized a hand, a foot, a child's shoe. And when it was over, you didn't speak of it. You just cleaned out the hut and kept going. And it's not just the plague. There's the fever that steals babies in their sleep, the sweating sickness that kills strong men in hours, the ague shaking chills, hot flushes, and a slow decline into death, the pox, the flux, the consumption which eats you from the inside out and leaves only a coughing ghost behind. When someone gets sick, you call the cunning woman, the village herbalist, healer, maybe witch, depending on who's asking. She doesn't wear robes. She doesn't have a diploma. She has a bag of herbs, dirt under her nails, and eyes that have seen too many funerals. She brews teas from yarrow and horehound, grinds willow bark for pain, and packs wounds with honey and moss. She chants sometimes. She prays. She mixes crushed beetles and goose fat if it's a chest infection. And if it's really bad, she reaches for the mandrake root, the one that makes people dream strange things and forget the pain while they slip away. You trust her, because she's all you have. The village priest might come too if he's sober, or not already at another deathbed. He mumbles prayers, sprinkles holy water, presses relics to the forehead. If the end is near, he gives last rites, so at least the soul has a chance, even if the body doesn't. But most of the time you just wait. You cool the fever with damp cloths. You breathe the same air and hope it doesn't catch. And you listen to the breathing of the sick, hour after hour, wondering when it will stop. Let's talk about medicine. If you live near a monastery, you might be able to see a monk. They keep herbals books filled with plants and what they might cure. Some are helpful, others creative guesses at best. You're told to wear a charm, burn sage, pray to Street Sebastian, sleep with garlic under your pillow. You try it all. Sometimes it helps, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes the treatment is worse than the disease. For fever, they might bleed you open a vein and drain the sickness out. If your humors are imbalanced, they might recommend vomiting or purging. For a headache, you might have leeches placed on your temples. For madness, cold baths, or isolation, or exorcism. And if you're poor, you get whatever someone in the village remembers from their grandmother's cousin who once saw a noblewoman survive a goat bite. The fear is constant because death comes suddenly and often without warning. One moment you're walking, the next you're laid out on a straw mat, your family staring, waiting, whispering. You've seen children die from a chill. You've seen strong men fall after a stumble. You've seen mothers bleed out in childbirth. Faces pale, lips blue, a baby wailing beside them who will never know their name. You don't get funerals with hymns and silk. You get wrapped in linen and buried fast before the body turns. And if it's winter, they might not even dig a grave until the ground thaws. You try to live well, to avoid sin, to give alms when you can. Because if you die in sin, you don't just lose your life, you risk your soul. And what happens after? Heaven, they say. If you're good, hell if you're not. Purgatory, most likely. A long, slow, cleansing fire that burns away your sins while angels and demons argue about who gets you in the end. So you pray. For health. For protection. For mercy. You light a candle for your brother who hasn't stopped coughing. You wear a token from a relic, even if it's just a splinter of wood someone swears came from the true cross. You whisper a blessing over your food, your child, your bed. And when you lie down at night, you don't dream of comfort. You dream of surviving, of waking up, of hearing your heart beat one more morning. Because in the medieval world, illness is not an event. It's a constant companion. And death doesn't knocks. It's already inside. You might imagine the center of medieval life is the village square, or the church, or the Lord's manor, but it isn't. It's the home, cramped, cold, crowded, and somehow still expected to be a cradle, a kitchen, a nursery, and a workshop, often all at once. And at the core of it all, women, but not in the way you might think, not celebrated, not equal, just expected. A woman is born with a job already decided for her. There is no debate, no ambition, no what do you want to be when you grow up. She will cook, she will clean, she will spin, weave, mend, knead, milk, carry, birth, bury, and obey. She will live in service of someone else's name, from father to husband to son. And she will do it without question, because questioners are troublemakers, and troublemakers are punished. She might marry at 12, 13, maybe younger if a dowry is involved. Not for love, not for compatibility, for survival, for alliances, for fields, for cows, for the promise that someone else, anyone else, will now be responsible for feeding her. Childbirth is her highest expectation, her most sacred duty, and her greatest danger. There are no hospitals, no pain relief, no understanding of germs, just midwives with linen cloths and hands that have caught more babies than they've held their own. The hut becomes a birthing room, a sacred space and a battlefield. She labors in silence or screams, depending on the culture, the pain, or the shame. She bites a stick. She sweats through her only clean smock. Her body does what it was told it would do, and sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes the baby comes out silent. Sometimes she does. Blood stains the floor, the cloth, the bed. If she survives, she's called blessed. If not, she's replaced. Children arrive one after another, not by choice. There is no birth control, only superstition and luck. She nurses one child while another clings to her skirts, and another waits to be fed. She is tired in a way that seeps into her bones and never leaves. And yet somehow she works. from sunup to sundown and often beyond. Grinding grain, fetching water, stirring pots of porridge that never taste different, scraping hides, plucking feathers, tending to sick animals and sicker relatives. She does the same work as men and more, and receives half the credit, if that. If her husband is cruel, she stays. If he's kind, she thanks God. If he dies, she wears black and gets back to work. Widows do not rest. They hustle harder. If she's unmarried, she is watched, suspected. A woman with no man must have something wrong with her. If she's too loud, she's a scold. If she's too smart, she's dangerous. If she has herbs in her pouch and knows how to stop a cough, she's a witch. And witches are burned, or drowned, or worse shunned, left to starve in a world that punishes independence. Now imagine being born a girl into all this. Your world is smaller from the start. You don't learn to read unless someone breaks the rules. You learn to sew, to tend fires, to keep quiet. Your dolls are made of rags. Your games are chores. By 6, you're helping your mother. By 10, you're cooking. By 12, you're hearing whispers about marriage. And if you survive childbirth yourself one day, you repeat the cycle. But life is no gentler for boys. From the moment they can walk, they're expected to work. Field work, fetching, guarding sheep, helping in the forge or the barn. There's no time for childhood, no teenage years. You go from child to laborer almost overnight. A boy's value lies in his back and his obedience. A girl's in her womb and her silence. And still somehow there is love here. It's not gentle, not poetic, but it's real. A mother croons a lullaby while grinding herbs. A father lifts a child to reach the bread shelf. Siblings curl together on the straw, breathing each other's warmth. You hold your baby brother when he cries. You rub your mother's back when she can't stand straight. You share your last crust of bread with your cousin even though you're still hungry. The family may not have much, but it has each other. And in a world where everything else is fragile, that is something. The structure is simple and brutal. The father is the head of the household. His word is law. He decides what you eat, where you sleep, who you marry. He can beat you if he likes. The church says he should be fair. But the church also says women should submit. He works the land, or oversees those who do, or dies young and leaves chaos behind. The mother runs the home. She teaches, feeds, cares, endures. She doesn't rest. She rarely laughs. Grandparents live with you if they live at all. Old age is rare. Most people are dead by 40. If your grandmother is still alive, she is revered not for wisdom, but for the sheer statistical miracle of her continued breathing. If someone in your family is disabled, they stay hidden, or mocked, or assumed to be cursed. And if someone dies when someone dies, you grieve quickly. You cannot afford to mourn long. The field still needs ploughing. The fire still needs tending. You bury the body in the churchyard if you can. Say a prayer and get back to stirring the soup. Family isn't sentimental here, it's practical. Each mouth to feed is a burden. Each pair of hands, a blessing. You share everything. Food, clothes, illness, space, hope. There's no privacy, no solitude, but also no loneliness. Because in the medieval family, you're never alone, even when you want to be. And when night falls, you curl into a ball beside your siblings. You hold your child close. You press your back to your spouse and pray the fire doesn't go out. Because in this time, in this place, family isn't just your support system, it's your only system. It's afternoon now. The sun hangs overhead, dull and pale like a worn coin, offering light but not warmth. You've already been awake for hours, worked for hours, Eaten, maybe. Rested, barely. And now comes the part of the day no one ever calls peaceful, because this is when the problems begin, not the problems of the body. Those have been with you since sunrise. Blisters, cramps, sunburn in summer, frostbite in winter, hunger that never really fades, back pain that you've learned to ignore. No, this is the time for people problems, land disputes, social tensions, petty arguments that become village-wide vendettas, and every one of them potentially fatal in a world without lawyers, appeals, or restraint. You're in the fields, or the village, or the alley between huts, and someone says something. It might be about your pigs straying into their pasture. It might be about a boundary stone that moved. It might be about that thing you said last week, or the way your son looked at someone's daughter. Words get sharp, fast, and words aren't just words here. Honor matters. Reputation matters. If someone calls you lazy, or a liar, or worse, a thief, you don't shrug it off. You defend yourself, or you suffer, because once the village sees you as weak, you're open prey. People take your firewood, your place in line at the mill, your dignity, and you don't have much of that left to spare. So you raise your voice, and now it's a conflict. Arguments are common. Fights happen. Sometimes it's fists. Sometimes it's sticks. Sometimes it's a knife pulled from a belt, and suddenly you're bleeding into the rushes, wondering if the village priest is busy. There's no police, no patrols, just the tithing man, maybe the one villager tasked with keeping the peace. A man with a badge, a staff, and a strong bias toward whoever owns more sheep. If things get bad enough, the village calls a manorial court held by the Lord's steward. He listens, he nods, he fines you, or beats you, or makes you carry a stone around town with a sign on your back reading, "Slanderer." Public shaming is a favorite pastime. You can be tied to the stocks, a wooden frame that holds your arms and head in place while children throw rotten vegetables, or sent to the pillory, where the punishment is not just discomfort, but humiliation. Your neighbors gather. They laugh, because they've been there too, and in the medieval world, someone else's shame is the best entertainment you'll get all week. Sometimes the punishment is worse. Caught stealing bread, you might lose a hand. Caught poaching deer from the Lord's forest, you might lose your life, because make no mistake, justice serves the powerful. If you're a peasant, your word means less. If you're poor, less again. If you're a woman, especially a woman, your testimony might not matter at all. Women are often punished for gossip, for disobedience, for scolding, a vague term that means talking too much about things men don't want to hear. For that, you might be forced to wear a scold's bridle, a metal cage that locks around your head with a plate over the tongue. It doesn't just hurt, it humiliates. That's the point. And if the crime is sin, adultery, fornication, or even just being caught alone with the wrong person, then the punishment is spiritual and physical. You might be whipped, made to crawl to church on your knees, or forced to confess in front of the whole village while holding a candle and trying not to cry. But what if your struggle isn't with a neighbor? What if it's with your Lord? Then it's not a struggle, it's a sentence. Because feudal law is not on your side. Your Lord owns the land, owns the mill, owns the oven. If you want to grind your grain, you pay him. Want to bake your bread in his oven? Pay again. Want to marry your daughter off to someone outside the village? Ask permission. Pay more. And if you complain, you're fined. Or worse, evicted. You can be stripped of your fields, your tools, your home, your future, just like that. And the church? Sometimes it helps. Sometimes it turns away, because the priest also answers to the Lord. Then there's the tension between villages. Borders are blurry. Maps don't exist for peasants. You know where your field ends because your grandfather told you so, but if the neighboring village says different, now you've got a feud. Fights break out over access to streams, grazing rights, woodland. Sheep wander too far. A boy throws a stone. Someone pulls a blade, and suddenly two villages are at war over a cow and a grudge from 20 years ago. And the taxes never stop, even if it's not your fault, even if the harvest was bad, even if your child is sick and your roof collapsed and your pig died last week from eating a spoiled apple. The king wants his share. The Lord wants his cut. The church wants its tithe. And no one cares if you have to eat weeds to pay it. So people snap. A man drinks too much and hits his wife. A boy breaks into the granary and steals a handful of oats. A woman is found praying alone in the woods, and someone whispers witch. You don't always know when the day will turn. One moment, you're gathering firewood. The next, your neighbor is dead, and the whole village is lined up for questioning. And if it's not violence, it's hierarchy. You feel it all the time, in the way the steward looks at you, in the way the merchant's wife refuses to stand near you, in the way your knees creak from kneeling during Mass, while the Lord sits on a carved bench and stares into the rafters like God lives up there full time. You're at the bottom, always, and yet somehow you stay standing because you have to, because the world isn't fair, but it's what you've got, because your children still need dinner, because your sister is waiting at home with bruises she won't talk about, because your goats still need feeding and your thatch still needs fixing and the sun is still up for a few more hours. So you clench your jaw, you nod, you apologize, even when you're not wrong. You walk away from the fight. You keep your head down when the reeve passes. Because in the medieval afternoon, survival isn't just about labor. It's about knowing your place and making sure you live to see the sun go down. The sun is gone. Not politely, like in our modern world where night arrives with lamps and screens and headlights. No. In the medieval world, nightfall doesn't arrive, it descends. It falls. Like a curtain, like a weight, like a warning. Darkness isn't just an absence of light. It's a living thing. It leaks through the cracks in your walls. It seeps through the thatch in your roof. It curls at your feet and whispers in your ear. You are alone now, and everything you fear has woken up. Inside the hut, the fire burns low. No one dares let it die not fully. But wood is precious. Peat burns slow but stinks. Smoke thickens the air until you're half breathing soot, half praying for warmth. The glow barely reaches the corners of the room. There are no lamps, no glass-shielded candles, just a single flame, maybe two licking at a piece of tallow or oil, giving off more smoke than light. You sit near the hearth. Everyone does. You eat your final mouthfuls of pottage, if there's any left. You drink a bit of small beer. You rub your hands together, though there's no real warmth left to coax from your skin. Your body aches. Your feet stink. You say nothing. Words take effort, and effort is a luxury best saved for tomorrow. Outside, the village has gone still. The sheep are penned. The chickens are silent. The blacksmith's fire is out. Even the drunk in the tavern has wandered home or fallen into a ditch. But the silence isn't comforting. It's expectant, as if the night is holding its breath. Because night is dangerous. Night is when thieves move, when wolves prowl the woods, when the door to the other world, whichever one you believe in, creaks open just a little wider. You don't go outside after dark unless you have to, not even to relieve yourself. If you must, you bring a torch, a knife, and every saint's name you can remember. You move quickly. You don't look too hard at the shadows. You don't answer voices you don't recognize. And you don't follow lights, especially not the ones that flicker in the woods, dancing like spirit. They say those lights belong to the Fae, or to wandering souls who can't rest. They say if you follow them, you'll never come back, Or worse, you'll come back chained. You hear noises, always. Scratching in the thatch, footsteps outside. The long, low moan of the wind slipping through the trees. Once, you heard a scream. Not animal, not human, just wrong. You don't talk about that night. And inside the hut, it's not much safer. You sleep beside the fire, or beside your family. You sleep in your clothes, with your shoes tucked near your head so rats don't chew the laces. You pull your cloak around you. You don't have a blanket, only layers of damp wool and your own body heat. Maybe you share the straw with siblings, parents, cousins, a sick grandparent who breathes like they're underwater, a baby who won't stop crying. If it's cold, you might even bring in the goat. Yes, the goat, because warmth is warmth, even if it smells like hooves and old milk. You try to sleep, you do, but your body doesn't forget the day. Your back is one long knot, your fingers ache, your stomach growls, and your mind is worse. Because now, when the work is done, the thinking begins. You think about the rent you can't pay, about the look the steward gave you, about the sickness in your child's chest, about the woman who died last week from a simple fever. You think about death, because it's never far. In the medieval world, death is not an event, it's a neighbor. You pass it in the street, you sit beside it in church, you feel it when you cough, when you bleed, when someone sneezes wrong. You see it in the graveyard full of shallow plots and wooden markers. You see it in the priest's face when he skips the sermon because the funeral queue is too long. You see it in the swollen belly of the man who drank bad water, in the blue lips of the newborn who didn't survive the night. And at night, in the dark, death feels close. You fear fire. A single spark from the hearth could catch the thatch above your head and turn your home into a torch. There is no fire brigade, no alarm, just screams and ashes. You fear beasts. Wolves roam the woods, not in fairy tales, in reality. You've seen the carcasses, the teeth marks. You heard of a man once dragged from his field at dusk. They found a shoe. That's all. You fear demons, not metaphorical ones, real ones. The kind the priest talks about, the kind that slip into your dreams and wake you screaming, the kind that tempt, whisper, possess. You sleep with a cross around your neck, or a charm sewn into your hem, or a sprig of rosemary under your pillow if you can afford the herb. You whisper prayers into the dark, not for salvation, for survival. Keep the fire lit, keep the wolves away, keep my soul safe if I die before I wake. And then maybe you drift off. Sleep is not restful. It's shallow. Your body tries, but the floor is hard. The straw is full of lice. Someone's foot is in your ribs. Someone else snores like thunder. You hear a rat chewing something in the corner. Still you manage. You doze. You dream. Sometimes your dreams are strange. You see the Virgin in a beam of light. You see your dead uncle smiling through the smoke. You fly. You fall. You wake gasping, not sure if you've been blessed or cursed. If you're lucky, the sun rises. If you're not, someone finds you still, stiff, with your hands curled like claws and your eyes half open. And the day begins with a different kind of work. A washing, a wrapping, a carrying, a prayer, a burial, a hole in the earth. Death doesn't knock. It slips in through the smoke hole. It waits in the corners, and in the medieval night, it never sleeps. So here you are, back in the dark, back beneath the low thatched roof, back on the scratchy straw, your cloak tucked up under your chin, your face turned just enough to feel the fading warmth of the hearth. The fire crackles softly now, not strong, not loud, but enough to paint dancing shadows on the dirt walls. The kind of shadows that no longer frighten you. They're familiar, like ghosts, that mean no harm. Around you, your family breathes. One wheezes, one snores, one murmurs in a dream. The baby has finally stopped crying. The goat stirs once, sighs, and settles. You hear a log shift in the fire and the slow hiss of a pine knot bubbling sap. You're tired, beyond tired, but something holds your eyes open just a little longer. Maybe it's the cold creeping up from the floorboards. Maybe it's the ache in your lower back. Or maybe it's the simple truth that sleep in this world is never guaranteed. Not when life is so short, not when death is so near, not when you live each day in the raw, exposed rhythm of survival. Today, like every day, has worn you down. You worked, you bled, you swallowed food that didn't fill you, and walked miles on blistered feet. You ducked behind silence when someone shouted. You flinched when the priest looked at you too long. You kept your head low, your thoughts quiet, and your hands busy. And yet you made it through. You lived one more day. And in this time, in this place, that's no small thing. Your body aches, yes, but your body exists. Your stomach rumbles, but it remembers eating. Your hands are cracked, but they held tools and maybe a loved one without dropping either. This world isn't kind. It's never been kind, but it is consistent. It punishes freely, rewards rarely, but it teaches you to endure. You've seen death, but you've also seen spring. You've heard the scream of birth as well as the cry of mourning. You've watched fields rot and watched them bloom again. That's what it is to live here, to live in the bones of history, not as a king, not as a knight, but as someone who went unnoticed, uncelebrated, unremembered. And yet you were everything. You built the walls, you tilled the fields, you raised the children, you fed the animals, you buried the dead, you sang into the night and danced when the ale ran sweet. You laughed, even when you shouldn't. You loved, even when it hurt. And you hoped somehow, always, that tomorrow would come. Now the fire dims again. The red glow has faded to embers. You feel the heat only in your memories now, not on your skin. The room has gone still. Even the air has stopped moving. The straw beneath you shifts as someone beside you turns in their sleep. And finally, you let your eyes close. The cold is still there. The wind still howls. The roof still leaks, and your muscles still hum with exhaustion. But your breathing slows, your mind unwinds, and the day, the long, grim, beautiful, human day, releases you. Let it go. You've seen how they lived. You've walked in their shoes, though they were cracked, thin, and lined with mud. You've eaten their meals, sat by their fires, and slept in their beds. And now you get to return, back to your own bed, your own time, your own soft blanket, your own silence that doesn't come with danger, your own night without wolves, fire, or fear. So tonight, as you drift off, remember, you don't have to wake up in a cold medieval hut, wrapped in rags, scratching flea bites, listening for footsteps in the dark. You get to sleep in peace. And that is a luxury nearly 1,000 years in the making. Sleep well.